What's up, everybody? Bradley Flowers here with this week's episode of Centers of Influence, the show where we bring you cool people in Mobile doing cool things. I'm super excited for this week's guest, Miss Tara Mcadams-May with TMAC Hair Studio.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for this. We are not 6 feet apart, but we do have our Clorox disinfecting wipes. Clorox is a proud sponsor. I'm kidding. They're not a sponsor of this show. I wish they were.
Would be cool.
That'd be awesome. I kind of rolled into that very, very easy. But we disinfected the whole studio, so we're good. Neither one of us have been sick or been around anybody sick. Knock on wood. I am. My gym is finally back open. I think they were the last gym in Mobile County that did not open, and now I have to go through TSA to get in.
Oh, wow.
So it's like full on pat down, temperature.
We still haven't went back to the gym. My 6-year-old does jiu-jitsu, and so we're waiting to get back into the gym for that.
I was super worried to get back. Like, I was a little bit like, I went to the gym the day that it closed, and my gym was one of the last ones to open up, but they were also one of the last ones to close. And it's not the cleanest place. And I was told, I work out with my brother-in-law, and I was like, let's go, it'll be fine. And it was like the last day before they closed. And it felt really like not sanitary. And most of it's probably in your head, you know? And I was worried about going back, but I'll tell you what, it's interesting, like the world we live in, right? Mm-hmm. Everything was super clean. We're at half capacity, which is always great in a gym.
Of course.
And they have a little guy with a squirt bottle, and whenever you get done with something, he runs behind you and cleans
like
it. I'm
Johnny
like,
on the spot.
Can we just keep doing this? Like, this is great. But super excited to have you. Tell everybody watching who you are, what you do.
Okay, so I grew up in the Mobile area. I've been here for 35 years, and I own 2 salons here in Mobile and in Daphne. And I also do coaching for salon owners and hairstylists that are looking for growth within themselves and within their company. And I do a lot of holistic health and hair. So I merge a little bit of that health side of things into the hairdressing field, along with teaching other hairdressers how to do the same thing.
So something you don't know about me, I don't think, is I come from a family of barbers and hairstylists.
Awesome.
Both of my grandfathers were barbers at different barbershops when my parents were not married. So it's kind of like a real, like, you know, hair Romeo and Juliet
right.
kind of. And then my grandmother is a hairstylist still to this day, and then my brother's a barber.
And I can assume that they're all healing type of people that are really nurturing and caring.
Yep.
And that kind of goes back to the roots of barbering, where we were taking care of the people in our communities way back before the dentists and the doctors were. So
that's like the reason for the red and the white in the barber pole.
Absolutely.
You know, they would hang the sheets and it would have blood on it, right? And that was how they advertised that was a barber, kind of, basically. My brother still has the old school barber pole that he turns on every morning, so and nobody can cut my hair like him. But and I'm like this weird guy that, like, the number of people that have cut my hair in my life I can count on one hand.
Right. There's a lot of people that way. You know, there's a connection between people and their barber or their stylist. And I think a lot of that goes overlooked, but during COVID, we've seen a lot of it come up, right?
It really makes you appreciate it. And it cracks me up, you know, being on these Zoom calls with people. I've had a ton of Zoom calls. I mean, I already do a ton of Zoom calls prior to COVID, but add COVID into that. I mean, it's like every other hour on I'm on a Zoom call, and you would see people with, like, normally that are prim and proper, and they have messed up hair and it's a little bit too long.
Right.
So how did you get into it?
In the hair industry in general? I tried not to.
Okay.
So that's the funny thing about my beginning is I always did hair. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something that I was like, one day I woke up and become a hairstylist. Right. I'd always just done it for myself, for my friends. You know, whenever it come to high school dances, things like that, I always joked about, like, my house being full of friends.
You were the one that did it, right?
And we're all doing hair and makeup, and I'm like the last one getting ready to run out the door. So I tried everything. You know, I've been in the mortgage business. I have worked door-to-door sales, selling Kirby vacuum cleaners.
Nice. Hey, there's no better sales training than the
That
Kirby vacuum
one's
thing.
tough.
Yeah.
And I've done lots of things throughout a period of time. And what actually was happening, I was working finance at Ashley Furniture, and some people come up to my counter. I thought for sure, like, they're about to hand me a credit application, but they asked for me by name. and I look, and it's the Board of Cosmetology. So I actually started beauty school with an ultimatum of do it or you're going to be banned from getting a license, because I guess someone turned me in at the time. I wasn't doing anything professional. This is before social media.
Yeah.
This wasn't like where people can advertise on the way that they can now. So this was simply like I had a little business card that said Hair by Tara that I gave to my little friends, like
that is so cool.
And I had a full-time job. So
I love that.
Long story short, when they came in and gave me this ultimatum and kind of let me know that I was on their radar, I walked back to my boss and just asked, like, hey, this just happened out front. And, here is something I'm interested in. At this point, I've been working various little odds and end jobs. And, it was great to be young and making good money in finance. But at the same time, I didn't see long term. Mm-hmm. So I asked if I could go to school, if he'd keep my job open. And he absolutely did. So I joined beauty school. I enrolled night and day so I could really speed through it, because at this point I knew how to do hair. I just didn't know the legal way of doing it.
Right.
So I did night and day classes.
A rogue.
Yeah, I just went rogue. So coming out of that, I actually got fired from the first place that I worked for being pregnant. Wow. Which is illegal, if anybody is questioning it.
In case anybody's wondering, that is illegal.
So that employer had to pay my unemployment for the term of my pregnancy. So I did stay home during my pregnancy and just kind of enjoy that first pregnancy. And I went back to work as a stylist when she was 5 months old. She's now turning 15 this year. So I've been doing hair for quite some time, 20 years now.
Nothing
total.
Like getting forced into something mafia style
Very.
As a sign from God that you need to be doing this, right?
And the signs keep coming. So I was in a really bad motorcycle accident at the end of September. And during that time, I was out of work. My arm didn't work for 6 weeks. I broke my jaw. I knocked out teeth that I'm still in the process of doing all the dental replacement for. And I went from, owning 2 salons, traveling every weekend, full speed to dead still. And I had a lot of, what I would say visions or calls from God during that time that really kept sending the message of be still, just slow down. And I didn't know it was going to be COVID, but I feel like a lot of that was just preparing me for what was to come. Right. And I was like, I'm going to embrace this. Owning 2 businesses during that time is very scary. Yeah. The overhead, I have no shame in letting people know. It's about $15,000 a month to float, my lifestyle with the salons.
And that's great that you did, because a lot of people that have never owned a business don't realize the overhead.
Right. Yeah. So it's the immense stress. And then I have legit W-2 employees. So I feel the stress of being able to take care of them and, what their future looks like. But I really embraced it, and I tried to not let it stress me out too much. And I said, you know what? I would have never taken this time for my children. When would I ever stopped, the 12-hour shifts and the traveling every weekend and all this to just be home? Right. So I'm thankful for it. Very thankful for it. And, now it's the catch-up game.
Right,
Now
right.
it's...
And it's kind of fun, too, though, right? I like... So I perform best when I am like wall-to-wall calendar with just way too many.
Me too. Under
That's
pressure.
when I'm at my best. Like when I have to get stuff done, I'm at my best. But it's interesting with me too. My daughter was at home with me when I was working at home, and she's 6 and requires a lot of attention. She's at that age where she can play on her own for a little bit or do stuff on her own, but she also needs the attention.
She wants it.
Yeah, and it's obviously. You get stressed out, you're like, oh my God, if you come in here one more time during the, but at the same time, I kept trying to remind myself to look, a year from now, I'm going to look back on these 3 months and be like, God, I missed that. Right. And it was the same way, so I quit my job and started Portal, and there was a 2-month gap. And when I was in that 2-month gap, I was doing a lot of planning and getting stuff ready and signing up with vendors and things like that. And I was so like ready to get to March 1st because that's when I was opening. It was just like I couldn't wait any longer.
Right.
And now when I have a really stressful day, I look back on those 2 months and I'm like, man, I would really like to go back to that. I had no problems.
Right.
And that's kind of how I kept reminding myself during COVID, you know. But it's interesting with your story. You know, I've heard my dad talk about, my dad's a contractor. And over the years, he'll bring up like, yeah, such and such is, he's doing work without a license, like he's not, you know. And I'm like, well, Dad, turn him in.
Right.
And he's like, no, because if I turn him in, they're going to force him to get a license, and then I have a real competitor.
Right.
I would rather them let them do all the stuff that's not going to require, that people aren't going to ask for license and insurance and things, and I'll get the good stuff.
You know, it's funny because Mobile Mardi Gras, you know, that's when we see a lot of the unlicensed stylists come out, you know, and people ask me like, oh, it's Mardi Gras, you must be so busy. And there was, you know, my day and time where I did all the debutantes and I did all these different functions. And then I got older. I had children. I wasn't going to the balls as much and I wasn't in that crowd of wanting to. But then there's the oversurgence of unlicensed personnel that can go downtown to your hotel and do your hair and makeup for really low cost. And at a certain point in time, you have to make a certain dollar per hour in the business for it to make sense. Right. Like I was telling you, when I walked in, I was just taking care of someone in West Mobile who's elderly and immune compromised. Yep. And so there's a certain dollar per hour I need to make to leave my salon, drive to West Mobile, do services, and come back. If I can't fulfill that same dollar per hour, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for me to leave the building. And so the same with Mardi Gras. You know, if I'm making what I should be making to deal with the traffic and the parking and to get there, then let's do it. But if there's people that are willing to do it for pennies on the dollar, then I'm going to let them have it. And why turn them in? You know, let them have their piece.
Right, right. And we deal with that too, you know, like with and I tell clients this all the time. So we're kind of, you know, we're not, at our insurance agency, we're not writing the insurance for the person that is buying it just to get their tag and then they're never going to pay it again. There's a lot of that in Mobile, and hats off to those agencies. They make it work. But, you know, our product is not designed for you to buy it one time. It's designed for you to buy it and keep it for 8 years. Right. That's the only way my margins work out, you know, and we have to deal with that a lot because we deal with a lot of flippers and things like that, and you know, sometimes they're buying that policy and they're only going to have it for 6 months, so you have to price it accordingly, you know. And
isn't it that eye-opening at how relatable business is in terms of business, right? So the same thing happens with hair. You know, I have people that come in because they got their tax money and they can afford to do a $300 or $400 like all over transformative hair service.
But if they're not going to continue to do it,
but they won't be able to come back and sustain that. So I make more money doing lived-in natural hair that it can continuously be touched up and kept and maintained. And I see these people in repeat business. Yep. You know,
that's what you want.
Yeah, $400 in one hit doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, you want that repeat business. You want to look at your books and them be full for the year.
That's right, and you get some consistency with that. You know, and one of the things, you know, the hardest part of my job is probably recruiting, and it's recruiting young kids, guys and girls, to come to work for us. And you know, I have a theory that the sexier a business is, the least money you make, and the more unsexy a business is, the more money you make. And insurance is obviously not cool at all. And so helping them understand, look, you know, the one question they always ask is like, what's the best part about insurance? I'm like, it's the residual income. Right. It's the repeat business. And I think that's probably the same thing with hair.
It absolutely is.
Getting those good, loyal customers. You know, Sally's going to come in every Thursday at 3:00 and it's going to be consistent, and you can kind of forecast your income, your sales, and your projections. But business is relatable, you know, from all forms. You know, with the Insurance Guys podcast, my insurance industry podcast, one of the best compliments I get is when I have somebody that reaches out to me and they're like, man, I loved your episode with such and such. Oh, great. What agency do you work for? Oh, I don't. I operate a restaurant for a living. I just take the word insurance out and put restaurant. I'm like, that's the thing. Like it's all relatable.
It absolutely is. And, you know, I come up with that a lot with coaching, with like sitting them down and you're saying like a sexy business, you know. In some forms, you think of salon, you're thinking like high fashion, you're thinking like everybody needs to fit the part and look a certain way. And really, if you do that, don't you become a little cookie cutter?
That's right.
You know? So having a diverse clientele and staff has been huge for us. And that's something that we've had for 11 years now in Mobile, you know. My staff is going to be of every color, of every age, and so is the clientele that comes in. So when you come into the salon, you never feel out of place because everybody looks the same.
Right.
you
right.
know, and that's what gives us such uniqueness and diversity, and knowing that it's a safe place, right?
Well, and it gives you, you're not pigeonholing yourself to one, this is what we do.
Right.
So talk a little bit about the coaching. I think one of the things we connected over was the fact that you do a lot of coaching for other salons over the country. I do a little bit, or across the country. I do a little bit of that in the insurance industry, not on necessarily an official capacity, but talk a little bit about that, how you got into it.
Well, I've always had just like this drive to teach. It's something that I really like. So when you're talking about staff retention and hiring, of course, that's going to be the most struggle with all salons as well, is hiring and staffing, right? So I like to get people really young that are trainable. I try to pull them out of beauty school, train them
Don't
up.
have to undo any bad habits. And,
No unteaching before the teaching happens. And recently I've started an apprenticeship program, and I've been focusing on that. So they're not even getting bad habits from school, where I feel like the instructors are underpaid and undervalued, and they're not pushing forth the education that's really necessary to become
the box.
Great, right? Yeah. So the apprenticeship programs have worked really nicely, and that, moves into the coaching. It allows me to show these business owners how they can really make more dollars per hour by hiring dollar per hour staff instead of just high-end commission stylists.
Right.
You don't have to have the best stylist in the entire city that does the best hair, that stays booked, that's super glamorous in order to be a successful salon. And I think a lot of people think they need that. They need all their chairs full with people. They need warm bodies there. Really, it's consistency. I tell people all the time that people will come back to a hairstylist and get their hair cut time and time again, even if the haircut's not perfect, if they had a great experience. If they had a wonderful experience there, they just feel comfortable enough with you to come back and get you to tweak it or whatever. If you're super glamorous and high-end and you have a really poor attitude, getting someone to repeatedly sit in your chair and put up with that's going to be a really hard game. So you got to have that just average across the salon floor, where maybe you deal with someone's attitude a little bit, but you can't have 5 divas all marching in a line, right?
Right.
So whenever we're going in and we're talking about hiring personality, don't worry about technical skill. And insurance is a bit the same. You don't need someone to understand insurance in order to get a job with you. You just need them to listen, learn the systems and the protocols, and
be coaching. I tell people, if you do it exactly like I tell you to do it, you will make more money than you ever thought you'd make. Not that money's the only thing, but that's the litmus test that people use.
Right.
That's what a young person. That's what they want. Is they want money.
And freedom.
And freedom. And I, we have the attitude. Part of our culture is I have the attitude of, if you can get your job done in one day, I don't care if it takes you 1 day or 30 days.
Exactly.
If you can, and you can't get it done in one day, but if you could, and you want to take off the other 29,
we do that.
Why would I care? And it set us up. I'll tell you what it did. Us having that attitude and hiring people who kind of mirrored that attitude set us up so good for COVID, because I'm in multiple insurance groups on Facebook with some of them have 30,000 agents in them. And I see all these posts from these agency owners, and they're like, how are you guys keeping track of your staff? Are you having them clock in? I put a program on their computer where I could track when they're on, and all this I'm like,
who cares?
As long as they're getting their job done, who gives a crap? Like, what does it matter? If you're getting your job done, I don't care if you clock in from 9 to 4. And you know what's funny, and I hope my team doesn't see this, because but it almost has, us having that attitude almost has made them over communicate with me when they are leaving early.
Absolutely.
It's
Same.
like I had one of my guys this morning texting me. He's like, hey man, I'm going to be 8 minutes late because I've signed up for this training with one of our technology that we use at one of my technologies. He's like, I signed up. It's a company called Tara. He's like, I signed up with a training with Tara, and it's at 8. We get to the office at 8:30. He's like, I'm going to be a few minutes late. I'm like, you don't have to tell me that. It's okay. Like,
right.
I'm not even going to notice that you're late. Like, it's fine.
But it's the beauty in that you've created that communication. We do the same thing. I feel like a lot of my systems pre-COVID was so successful. If anybody followed my training, that they opened wonderfully. I know that there's a burnout level on staff, so I don't make them work all day.
Right.
They split the shift. You come in 8 to 2, you leave, you go home. You come in 2 to 8, you had all morning off. You mix that in with like some of those days, you're getting kind of like a day and a half off in the middle of the week. It's really flex scheduling. Then there's perks, like you were saying, like if you can get it done, then go home. With our level 2 perk, it's the same thing. There's a dollar amount to be made in order for me to employ you there and it makes sense and us be profitable, or I need to give the chair to someone else. But if you can do that in 3 days instead of 5, sister, high five, see you later. I'll put someone else in that chair. So you have to have that attitude instead of like, no, they have to work the same way I worked growing up and we had to come in the salon from 9 to 5 every day. It's not sustainable to work that long and be creative and be on top of your game. So,
And it doesn't mean you're all loosey-goosey and letting people run all over you and do it. It doesn't. You still have that. You have to balance those too. We have to have some difficult, you shouldn't have done this conversations as well,
Yes.
It's so the coaching thing, talk a little bit about, how you got into that. Like what got you started?
So a lot of it was, and now I've even thought about dropping the fact that I even relate it to hair because like you're saying, the interchangeable business, right? So I noticed that a lot of other business owners would reach out to me for help.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I do hair, what? But it was in some way, I guess they were looking up to just the success of TMACs over a period of time and just asking
People take
questions
notice.
about getting into their own business, whatever it might be, some being health coach, whatever it might be. And so I was like, what do I do that could create residual income? Coaching. Once I created and wrote these systems and these documents and I got everything in a line, now it's a simple spreadsheet basically where if I hire someone in or they hire me in, I can just set it up week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 and put them through a system and it's tailored to customize their business. It's not do what I did because I did it the right way.
Right.
It's more about finding what they want and creating that for themselves so that their home life and business merge together and they live a more holistic lifestyle. So I started doing it for businesses outside of hair before I realized like, okay, well, let's stick to what I know best, the hair industry. If anything, doing this 20 years, I learned a whole lot of failures, right? I've made terrible mistakes in business throughout this time and then a lot of good ones. So using just the things I've learned in the past and applying them to other people's business, sometimes you just need an extra set of eyes on things to really see like, wow.
Right.
And I always say the secret of coaching is really not saying anything at all. Most of the time I'm just there to listen and let people reflect.
And they just need you to like affirm what they already, I can't tell you how many times people have reached out to me. I did a thing over COVID because I was working from home, because I was not leaving for lunch, because I had no drive time, because my team was not with me, therefore I was not doing as much like, hey, Bradley, can you look at this kind of stuff? I actually had about 2 extra hours in the day. So I did a thing during COVID where I basically blasted out on all my social platforms, hey, my calendar's open if anybody wants to book a Zoom call.
Yes.
And I bet I did 150 Zoom calls in 3 months with just like random insurance agents. Some I knew, some I didn't. And the overwhelming majority, they had a problem they needed solved and they already knew the answer. And it was just like, do you think, I'm like, yeah, like sometimes people just need that little just push.
Right. That was really beautiful because we did a similar thing with Hattori Hanzo Shears. I ended up doing Zoom calls, hour-long ones. Some that I was demoing, some I just sat and talked business. And it was just, what can I do to get back to the community at this time? My knowledge, where I usually charge for it. I'm just going to give it out there. You just got to be present on the call. And I just did it, Gary Vee style, one-on-one. Like, what's your question? What can I answer for you? And let me spit my 2 cents, right? Yeah. Because sometimes that's all someone needs is that one sentence for them to make the decision to move forward.
And it's interesting, it's hard when you go from not giving advice to people in a like coaching kind of scenario to doing that. It's a weird shift. So like for me, like when we started the Insurance Guys podcast, I didn't think that like there were some subjects that I knew a lot about, but at the same time, I did not give myself enough credit that, hey, this really could help somebody else.
Right.
And we did an episode on Instagram. It was one of the first episodes we did. And it was just basic, just how to post on Instagram, what hashtags are. Nothing like super mind-blowing or anything like that. And I had so many people reach out to me like, I took so many notes during that episode. It was so, I'm like, wait a minute, maybe some of the stuff, maybe like people know all these things, but maybe if we can put it together and package it and give people a direction. And that kind of made me realize, okay, like I had this anxiety of, I don't want people who are better insurance agents than me, and there's a lot of them, thinking that, who does he think he is? Giving it, everybody, even if you're one day in the business, can help somebody.
And that's something that Mobile has a lot of room to change in.
Yes.
I think competitive businesses in Mobile aren't very open-armed. And I've done a lot of guest speaking to that. I've went into beauty schools. I've been on advisory boards, done a lot of like consulting with other salon owners and such. A lot of people are afraid to let their business out there. Yep. I get it. It's a pride thing to kind of put it on the table, or to just be humble and embrace your competitors.
It's the old school way of like, I got to keep it all to myself.
Right.
And granted, you don't show you're not going to put everything out there. But, right after we started the Insurance Guys, I had a buddy reach out to me that works for a company that's very traditionally super closed off and competitive. And he's like, why are you giving out all this? You're giving out all your best advice to all your competitors. I said, dude, you and I are not competitors.
Right.
Our competitor is the big company that's trying to put us out of business.
Right.
And despite that, even if we were competitors, there's enough business to go around. I don't know if you know this, but my wife is literally my next door competitor with another insurance company, completely separate. We almost never fight over the same client.
Of course.
There's enough to go around.
There's enough heads in Mobile for every hairdresser.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
I always relate it back to, because I have this a lot, I've trained people for years. There's many other stylists and salon owners in this town that were once, trainees at TMAC. So people will always say, well, when are you going to stop telling everybody how to do hair as good as you and letting them go open their own places? Why would I stop that? For one, it gives me a little bit of happiness to know that someone soared with the knowledge that I was able to pass on. And I always tell the people under me as they're training, I know that you'll be better than me because you're getting a head start on the game. I didn't have someone take me under their wing. I had the people that put you in the back room, don't want you to watch them do hair because you might steal their secrets. Yep. I'm going to give you everything for one reason. You can give the recipe away. That doesn't mean they can bake the same cake as you. People,
you've got to take action. It's the action. It's not you can take action and not have any substance behind it and it'll work out better than the person who has all the tools and won't take the action.
Right.
All day long. I had a person that we let go from our office last year that just wasn't a good fit, amicable split, everything's good, that went and opened their own agency in kind of a crappy way, know. And somebody asked me, they said, are you going to, go after them or whatever? I said, I'm not in the business to keep people from chasing their dreams.
Right.
If you work for me and you would rather go out and do this on your own and that's really what you want to do, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to either figure out a way for us to do it together, or I'm going to be the one pushing you out the door and saying, go. I'm putting together a keynote. So now that things are starting to open back up, I've got a few conferences that I'm speaking at. I actually got 3 in the month of October and 1 in September. And I'm putting together, I'm not sure which one I'm going to give it at, but the insurance industry is very notorious for, we're keeping all our secrets to ourselves. If you leave us, we're going to sue you. The insurance industry likes to do the whole, we're going to send you a cease and desist over something we can't sue you on, but we hope that you're too scared to get the attorney and then you let it go.
Sounds like salon industry, yes.
And I'm basically going to do a keynote on, non-competes or BS.
Yeah.
Non-competes. And the center of it is, the nucleus of that presentation is, non-competes are designed for you to protect your business against malice. They are not designed for you to control the lives of your former employees.
Right. And I'll be the first to say that. I had non-competes that I kept in my business for a long time. In the recent probably 2 years, I dropped it. But none of it was meant to stop them from being productive individuals in town. It's meant to, in which some I've had to send some cease and desist. It's like, you can't download every client's file
Right.
because it's personal
That's malice.
information.
Like,
that's
that's
malice against
yeah.
the business at that point. But I've also had such an open door policy. If we're splitting ways, take all of your client information out of my system. Most of the time, I even leave the building so they don't feel harassed with me hovering. And I'm like, get it. Get all your information. Call all your people. Let them know. I'm sure you may have already. And I try to make it split. Does it after the split end well? Almost never. I'll never lie. I don't know why that happens. I think a lot of it is just tension on either side. But I always wish the best for these people. And I'm happy for their successes, because I know that they worked for that. And like you're saying, if you're not ready to do it with us anymore, then why would I want to hinder what you're doing on your own? If anything, why wouldn't you take a little bit of healthy competition? Like, I'm very competitive spirit. If anything, that pushes me to be better and better and better.
Right. Well, and the other thing I told that guy that called me is I said, also, it holds me accountable. If I'm giving away my best stuff for free, then I have to improve upon it.
Always be creating content, right? And that's why I was saying, like, all I gave away is what I gave away then. Every single day I have new thoughts and I imagine new things and I see new techniques come to fruition in my mind. They don't get that.
Right.
They're not living in here with me. So giving it away, they might only absorb 10% of what you said. So give them that 10%. Let them turn it into their own thing. I remember in one situation, a stylist that formerly worked with me had used a term that wasn't a real term at the time. And we joked about it in the salon and we said it all the time. Now it's used as a normal hair term in the industry. But at the time, whenever they split with me, it was like, Tara's still in her term, and I'm like, I mean, it's like a word. Like we combine two normal termed words into one word.
Trademark?
And now it's like it's used everywhere, right? It's a common term, but it's just funny how little minute things that us as business owners might not think anything of, to that person may be their only thing. And they hold pride and they hold some kind of attachment to that. So I've just learned to freely give information and to coach without any resentment or holding back at all based off of prior experience.
And it puts you, by you doing that in the person's mind, it puts you so far ahead of your other competitors in the coaching space. Like, I'm getting way more out of this. In one of the Facebook groups I was talking about, somebody posted in there, and they were an agency owner, had somebody leave and go somewhere else, and they were considering sending cease and desist and all that. And I posted this long response to it and basically said, look, and this is so in the insurance industry, have personal lines and commercial lines. And yes, you can get into some crazy revenue with commercial lines, but most people are going to be personal lines, which is, you're making $100 a policy, no big deal. And I said, look, if they intentionally go after your business and like, how much could they take? Like seriously, like how much could they take? $10,000 in revenue? That's what it's going to cost you to go after them.
Yes.
You would be better off picking up the phone, calling her and saying, which accounts do you want? And they're going to feel guilty. And if they are brave enough to say, I want this one, this one, this one, it's not going to be $10,000 worth.
Right.
You're better off doing that. Are there situations where people get screwed over? Yes. Are
Absolutely.
there situations where people target you? Yes. But I would argue that if you fire somebody or somebody quits and they intentionally go after you and hurt you, it's your fault for not firing them before you figured out they were that kind of person.
Almost always.
Like every single time.
Almost always.
That's what like a lot of business owners I think don't realize. Like everything's your fault. Like every single thing that happens, even the things that aren't your fault are your fault. We had an issue pop up yesterday with a client and a lender. Like, look, it's my fault because we should have called. Like, we should have had a process in place. We couldn't help that it happened, but we should have had a process in place to catch it early enough that it didn't become an issue.
Right.
know?
And it took a long time to get there, right? So
Absolutely.
your head start on the game for being there already.
Well, mine was
honestly.
from, prior to opening Portal, I was kind of like a manager at another company for 6 years, and I was like the worst manager in the world. So mine was from, okay, I'm just going to do the opposite of what I did here. And a lot of that was a result of corporate red tape and things, and you can
Of
only
course.
do so much. But anyway, this has been probably one of the best conversations I've had on this. I really enjoyed it. I think we got into a lot of like good, just like granular businessy advice. I think because of the contrast in the two types of businesses, but also the similarities, a lot of folks would be able to get a lot out of this. So we're getting pictures taken right here. He's wanting us to act like we're in the show. But anyway, I really appreciate you coming on. Tell everybody watching or listening how they can do business with you, follow you, find you.
Absolutely. So for anybody that's looking for me on Facebook, it's going to be Tara Mcadams-May. It's my professional public figure page. On Instagram, it's going to be TMAC75. And then you can follow my websites. It's going to be www.holistichtherapist.com for all the coaching and education needs and blog posts, or www.tmaxhairstudio.com to book at either locations in Mobile or Daphne.
There you go, guys. That's this week's episode of Centers of Influence. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Bye.